That's good. we live, Suncast?
Yes.
It's unfortunate. I'm in the middle of a very important game.
I'm almost ready.
This doesn't show any sign of ending. I'm winning the game too. Oh, that's not...
Is Paul really quiet, or is it just me?
Oh, Andrew maybe turned down my gain. That might be why. Everyone,
well, now you sound a little better.
Podcast has different opinions about what my level should be. So every time I do one, they're like, "Hey, you're a little loud, or you're a little low." So then I change it, and then the next person's like, "Hey."
Well, you know, Andrew has to be louder than you, so.
Well, that's not hard. Oh, you little.
Let's see if I can't figure this out. Come on, Windows. That's not really what I wanted, but that's the way it's going to work today. Come on.
That's incredible.
There we go.
I need to dispense with Camper before we can start this podcast.
All right. Hold on. I was thinking I was... Jesus. I am all over... Okay. It took about 3 seconds for the notes to sync, and I was like, wait a minute, these should all be done. But, you know, here we are. You ready, Paul?
Almost. Because I too need to sync the notes.
Oh, no, why? Why did that go? All right, there we go.
Why? He says, why? As if you would like the answer if there were one. Okay. Yes.
Are you finally ready?
Ready. You got to be kidding me. I just now got an email from CES that today, on the Friday before CES, confirmed that my registration is now complete.
Wow.
Yeah. That's all.
You ready? Let's do it.
All right, here we go.
You look like you're sitting in the back of a church, and we need to...
Yes. I need a lot of time in church to forgive me for my transgressions.
Which there are many, including the ones done today. But before we dive into that, today's show is brought to you by Cloudberry, makers of backup and file management services. We'll be talking about them here in a little bit. But check them out, Cloudberry Labs. They are doing good stuff. Speaking of people not doing good stuff, what is this image? Remind you of?
I actually just peed myself a little bit, not the good kind. It's like, yeah. I hope never to see that scene that you just showed. So that looks like it's the New York part of Vegas.
It is.
Which I believe is across the street from the hellhole that we stayed, or at least I stayed in last year, the Excalibur.
Yep.
Do you stay there too? I can't remember.
Yeah, I was there with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I try to block the whole Vegas thing out of my head. It's not good.
Yep.
But yeah, we're going back.
Well, the good news is here, and I think this might be impacting you potentially, or maybe not. They're predicting snow and ice and all sorts of other versions of hell on Monday. So if you just arrive in Vegas and I don't, that it's totally not my fault.
I don't usually pray for flight cancellations. You know, that's kind of contrary to everything that I care about. But I got to tell you, in this case, I'm not sure I would care too much.
Yeah, you know, CES would be great if there were about 90,000 less people. I think that's just kind of the
Yeah. Yes, yes, and maybe if it was in Des Moines or St. Louis or
yes,
somewhere in Kentucky,
But
or
anyways, folks,
basically anywhere else in the United States.
so Paul and I, well, as we've complained about for many, many weeks and months, we'll be here, arriving. Paul and I actually both arrive around sometime 10, we'll just say 10:30 a.m. on Monday. That would
That's
be Vegas local time. And we'll be there together doing stuff.
I'm sure we'll be very happy, and I have no expectation that we won't be able to check into our hotel room immediately and get right to work.
Yeah. Yep. So that's coming Monday, folks. Paul, curious, what laptop are you going to take?
You know, it's funny. As of this second, I'm not 100% sure. I was kind of hoping to finish my Surface Book 2 review before I left. But then if I do that, I shouldn't really bring it because I have so many other devices to bring. So two of the other devices, actually, there are three other devices I'm considering right now. There's an HP Spectre, the new one. This is the 13-inch, you know, gold, and this version ceramic white and kind of a dull gold color, which is kind of cool. There is the HP Envy 13-inch laptop, which I think I've written about both of those devices to some degree. And there's a device I have not written about yet, which I believe is a Lenovo Yoga, I want to say 920, basically the new version of the Lenovo Yoga, which is beautiful. And it's funny, I was kind of thinking about it like, well, you know, maybe I should run battery life tests and kind of figure out which one gets the best battery life and decide that way and everything. But I mean, honestly, for what we're doing, that kind of doesn't matter. I mean, we're just going to be out in the world. You know, maybe I should just go with the thinnest, lightest one. Anyway, this is a long story. I'm sorry. I am not 100% sure yet still. It will probably be one of those.
Well, you've got many hours to think about it until then.
Yeah, I have some hours, yeah.
Some hours.
So some few hours, yeah.
Yeah. So I want to do a quick update here. We talked about this yesterday about the
Hold on. What are you bringing?
Oh, what am I bringing?
You never said what you were bringing. Oh, you're the 15-inch.
Yeah, 15-inch, because I suspect I'll be doing some video editing, and this thing is it's
powerhouse, but that's a big device to carry around all day. You know,
I'm a big boy, Paul.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, it's in a backpack. It's not like I'm actually like carrying it like a briefcase, just putzing around.
Yeah, you could put a little handle on there though. That'd be kind of cute.
They should sell maybe like a like a large surface loop.
A surface loop, they could call it, yes. A surface carrying loop.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should patent that. A means by which a user could carry a laptop as if it were a briefcase.
We will make tens of dollars, Paul, but it'll be worth it.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Can I go on now? Or are you still
using and abusing myself?
That is a not even going to go there. Windows 10 update. So yesterday it was kind of uncovered. Actually, I think I was the first to write it up, and then Microsoft confirmed it, which I already knew because I told them about it. If you have Windows 10 S and you enroll in the Insider program, it downloads Windows 10 Pro. But actually, I don't really know if it does. So here's what's real confusing. The watermark that is on every Insider build on the bottom right corner says Windows 10 Pro. If you go to About PC, it says you are running Windows 10 Pro, but you can't actually install third-party apps. So this seems like it's almost like a branding issue or something. But I don't know if you're actually off of S, but it's about as clear as mud.
There you go. Another day in the life of the Insider program.
Yep. Conveniently, just roll the dice. You never know what you're gonna get.
Yep.
Hopefully not Snake Eyes. I actually don't play dice, so I have no idea. I assume Snake Eyes are bad.
Actually be good for all we know. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Unless you're a snake, I guess.
We don't know.
Anyways,
sure.
I just only saw the tweet, but Outlook's getting a new calendar. What's going on there?
Yeah, so if you saw the tweet, you basically saw everything there is to see about this story, unfortunately. But sometime back in the fall. Yeah. Microsoft started rolling out a new version of Outlook in beta, Outlook.com, I should say. And it's only been the mail component so far. So if you want to use this new version, it's just the email part of it. And the idea was that I think what they said at the time was that by the end of last year, they were going to update the contact and the calendar portions, I think, which are called people in calendar, actually. But today they announced that they are starting to roll out a beta version of the new calendar. So you have to kind of look for it. It's not available to everybody because why would it be? That would be too simple. I don't have it yet, but it looks good. As you would expect. I've been looking at the new Outlook.com recently for various reasons unrelated to this, and I was struck again just this morning before I heard about this by how nice it looks. It's a nice looking service, but then you go to the calendar part and you're like, oh, it's like Hotmail from the 1990s or something. It's really bad. So anyway, it's coming.
Well, the nice thing is that if the Outlook.com version is being redesigned, then we can probably expect the Windows 10 version to be redesigned probably 2019, maybe 2020 if we're lucky.
Well, I mean, on a related note, all of those products and the Outlook mobile apps and so forth are all under the same team now. And so each of them was developed by different people, different teams, whatever, and they're consolidating that stuff. And so it is possible that we will see a future version of mail and people and calendar on Windows 10 that will look and work more like, say, Outlook.com, which, by the way, it should. That's a great looking app, but no, I mean, no news about that, but it's certainly plausible.
At this point, Outlook.com should be a progressive web app that you can pin and is also available through the store. But
I could,
here we are, and it's not. So maybe they're going that way, but I don't know what's taking them so long.
Yeah, no news.
Speaking of no news, Paul, we still have no news about Cloud Clipboard, and I might.
This is like your Moby Dick, the great white whale that you will chase until it happens, I guess.
It is such a good feature. Don't get me wrong, timeline's cool and great, but you know what's cool and great? Being able to right mouse click and copy a URL on your PC and go to your phone and have it there.
If it helps, I without knowing how they're implementing this exactly, but looking at how they implement other cross-device technologies, in some ways it doesn't necessarily have to hit with RS4 for it to happen in the RS4 timeframe, right? Windows 10 probably needs some underlying code to make this work, but I think a lot of the work is on the mobile side, and that stuff could happen at any time. So I don't know. It's a lot of this stuff. It's like the pick up where you left off type stuff, or continue on PC, the continue on mobile part that Microsoft has yet to talk about. I mean, it's all kind of interrelated. So I realize they haven't talked about it yet, but I wouldn't give up hope on this one. I think we're going to see it this year, if that makes any sense.
Well, assuming Build is back in Seattle next year, if it is not, I will plant out a chair on Microsoft's campus with a megaphone and cordially remind them every 15 seconds that they need to deliver this feature.
Nice. Get a megaphone. They like that.
Yeah, they will. I'm sure security will be very kind when they knock me over and drag me out.
It's so cold and windy out that I think the trees are squeaking. I think that's what I'm hearing.
My daughter.
It sounds like plastic squeaking.
So my daughter calls squirrels squirrelers. And as we were walking out and getting in the car for school, she's like, "Daddy, it's really cold. What happens to the squirrelers?" And I said, "Well, they kind of get warm or they just die." She looked at me like, "Really?"
Because so I mean, I don't know that your daughter actually wants the real answer to this question, but because we have a dog now and have to walk it every day, we have actually observed what does happen to the squirrels. Because when it gets really cold, they basically just disappear into their little nests, and they kind of cuddle together, I'm sure, or whatever. And I'm sure a bunch of them do die. But actually, after a couple of days of this, they start moving around. Like I don't know if they have to go eat or whatever they do. I know squirrels supposedly store nuts and everything, but like they actually do come out. Like they do disappear for some number of days, but we've noticed like they actually come back, even though it's even colder than it was before. So on This Week in Squirrels, Winter behavior. What do they do?
Well,
sometimes they move. Sometimes they don't.
I can tell you what one squirrel is not doing. That was celebrating Christmas or the New Year's because I hit him with my car on December 23rd or 4th. That was
better than a deer.
Well, yeah. But everybody knows that feeling. You see the little animal run out, and you just kind of like you brace for it, and
then you never actually hit him. You never hit him.
Right, never do. Not this time. It was tung 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 tung, and I was like, oh,
yeah. This is a long time ago, but one time in Phoenix, I was driving down the street, and this bird kind of swooped down in front of the car, and it's going to come right up, and whatever, and it came. We went down, and it was like, just drove through like a snowfield of feathers. I was like, oh God. Like I hit this bird. It was very unusual,
Yeah, I don't think I've ever hit a bird. That's
yeah.
We're just turning this podcast slowly into animals because that's what
Mutual of Omaha's, not Wild Kingdom or whatever. Episode 1, Squirrels.
Now, why is my mouse? This is the magic of Miracast. Actually, before I even jump into that, where is my mouse? There's a fun little bug in Miracast. I'll try to do it right here.
A bug?
You might be able to see. That's my mouse right there. If I move it too quickly off the screen, you probably can't see it now. It actually gets stuck up there. Like it doesn't actually ever get off the screen, so you have to move it slowly.
No one has probably ever observed this, but Miracast sucks.
It's not. It's
really terrible.
It's just good enough that I haven't switched to anything, but it's kind of like Skype. It's like, it's on that fence of like, it works good enough to get it done, but it's by no means a best-in-class experience by anything close.
I think what you meant is it's on that spectrum, but I see what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. But speaking of best-in-class and good old stuff here, Cloudberry Labs ransomware is actually a massive problem. I know we've been talking a lot about the CPU issues the past couple of days with Intel and all that good stuff. But one of the biggest threats, probably much bigger than that now that it's all patched, is ransomware. And Cloudberry Labs has you covered. They've got ransomware protection built into their software or their backup and recovery software, and they can take the pain out of it. So if you've ever experienced ransomware, or if you're just, to be honest, scared of it, because it really does happen to everybody and you don't want to pay to get that stuff back, check out Cloudberry Labs. That's cloudberrylab.com. They will have you back up, they will have you recover, and they will do it very conveniently and fluidly. Fast and fluid, I think, is what Microsoft used to say. They don't say that so much anymore.
Yeah. I think Apple stole it from them and stopped saying
it. Continuing on here, Paul, with the tradition of talking about animals. So this hits very close to home. So we had to put my dog down last year, as you made fun of me several times when we did that, which I always appreciate. We haven't had a dog in the house, and my wife, very slowly, but today it amped up to like 3 pictures. Has just been texting me pictures of different dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, I just got a dog, and if I could give you any advice at all about anything, and I know no one wants like life advice or parenting advice or whatever, but don't get a dog. just don't.
So the problem here is probably much like you. In our household currently, there are 2 women, my wife and my daughter, and me. And I suspect when it comes to the voting, my vote will be lost in the mail.
I believe to my daughter especially, but both of my wife and my daughter, I'm considered cute, that I have opinions. Just I can sort of hear them talking sometimes, like just let them complain. This will pass when we'll go get the dog, or whatever. Like it just doesn't matter. Yeah. So you're probably going to be getting dogs. What I'm hearing.
Yeah. I'm coming to the realization it's not a matter of if. And granted, I like dogs. I have no problems with dogs. I just don't know if I really want. The thing is the great thing about my dog that we had to put down was that he was very easy. He slept all day, which was probably a sign that he was going out. But anyways, like he slept all day. You took him outside like 3-4 times, and he was fine. A puppy
dog is the same,
like
by the way. A puppy is not like that.
No.
No.
We're going to rename the show First Puppy Daily is what's going to happen.
Because that's all you're going to hear. Just the puppy.
Yep.
No, it's
I was like, hey, how about an iguana? They don't make noise.
Yes. Yep. How about a chia
Turtles?
pet? Why don't we start small? See if we can get a Bob Ross chia pet thing going. And if we can get that afro going, then maybe we'll look at something else, maybe a different kind of plant.
Oh gosh. Speaking of things that are growing like chia pets, Paul, Apple, not all that surprisingly, had like a blockbuster week of New Year's.
Yep.
They must look forward to this week for many reasons. But Apple announced that customers spent $300 million in the App Store on New Year's Day in 2018 alone, and $890 million in total over the week starting Christmas Eve.
Well, if there are any Microsoft fans who have not yet slit their wrists over the reversal of fortune that has occurred between these two companies, I have a new data point for you to consider. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw this. I put this in the short takes, but Apple announced, I'm doing this off the top of my head, but I think the figure was Apple paid out to app developers, I think it was $27 billion in 2017, calendar year 2017. So I went back and looked at Microsoft's previous 4 quarters. It doesn't map exactly. It's not January to December. It's actually the previous October through the end of September, right? Because it's shifted 1 quarter. We don't have Microsoft's most recent quarterly results yet. But let's just say a very recent 12-month period. Microsoft's net income during that time, same 1 year period, roughly same 1 year period, was about 21 or I think it was maybe $22 billion. So Microsoft, Apple paid more to developers of mobile apps than Microsoft profited for the entire same time period.
Yeah, that's
it's astonishing. All of Microsoft.
Yeah, and so it's no surprise here when we all think about Steve Jobs yelling developers on stage. He was actually calling them home from the App
Yes,
Store.
where are you going? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Geez. I know. And Apple took, of course, 30% of that for itself. So the total size of that app market is, that plus 30%. So let's say somewhere it's close to 30. So almost 40. It's probably 38 billion dollars annually. Like, seriously. I mean, that's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah, there's no other way to describe it. That's $26.5 billion paid out is a monumental size of cash. So
it's not a bad business.
No, it's really not. I mean, I'm just thinking about like that $26 billion. That's roughly Microsoft's revenue for 1 quarter, by the way. They're always somewhere between
that's right.
And
that's right.
Yep, their total revenue is right around there. So that is nuts. That is NUTS. Speaking of things that are not so nuts, this was actually, I believe, just announced today, but I can't say the name. Amazon's Echo device, that little personal digital assistant, is going to be coming to headphones and smartwatches because they have a new SDK to help build that out, along with near field or whatever far field mic support built in.
There's been a lot of navel gazing recently about Cortana, Bing, even, that kind of stuff. I've seen. We did the Ask Paul thing today, and a bunch of readers were asking about these topics. And the Invoke speaker, we talked about this previously, is the only speaker that ever occurred for Cortana so far. Is Microsoft serious about consumers, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I unfortunately, I felt this way about Cortana for a long time, that this is kind of another Windows Phone situation, that as kind of a standalone consumer play, it's just not going to make any sense. And I think what they're doing with businesses and back-end services makes sense. But, the Amazon thing that you're referring to me, is the market leader consolidating its position, and that we have these two companies that are going to dominate this field, which are Amazon and Google. It doesn't matter which one's number 1, number 2. I mean, I sort of think it's going to shift a little bit, but that doesn't matter. These are the two big players. Apple will always have its kind of thing over in the corner because they're Apple and they have a very loyal user base and so forth. Roku announced this week they were getting into this market, sort of, for entertainment services. Samsung is opening up their Bixby thing that nobody cares for to make it more like the Google Assistant and like the Amazon equivalent, which I will also not name. But I think the market is kind of spoken. I mean, I don't know if you saw this figure too, and I don't know what the equivalents are for Amazon. I put this in Thurrott now today. As of very recently, Google's been updating their website finally, and Google Home and Google Assistant are compatible now with more than 1,500 different smart home devices from over 200 brands. You know, wow. It's basically everything, which is the other way to say that. And you might have seen the Mary Jo Foley story from mid or late December, where it was, I don't know the exact numbers again, I'm sorry. Something like Cortana is compatible with 200 skills, and
200 or 300,
Amazon
something like that.
25,000 or something. Like it was like not even close. I just think this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, it almost feels like to me that Cortana for Microsoft is now just like an afterthought. I mean, if you think about it though, from Microsoft's perspective, other than the voice interactions, everything else for Cortana is already being used in Azure for other things, right? It's just machine learning and AI. All they do is just put a simple in quotations there, sort of query on top of it. And then it just uses that technology that they've already built and used for other applications to create the execution of the skill. And so really all they have to invest in is voice dictation at this point. Everything else they've already got the stuff. So it's even if Microsoft, it's all there. It's just whether or not how they want to build it out. So,
I mean, even Microsoft Bing as a search engine, right, has high single-digit usage share worldwide. I think in the United States it might be 14 or 15% or whatever, and that sounds terrible, but that's still a pretty good number of people, and it's enough interactions to give it the smarts that the data set basically that Microsoft needs to make that stuff intelligent. And like you said, I mean, Cortana basically what it's really about is just real language interaction or natural language interaction, the ability to speak to it and have it speak to you and have there be a conversation that occurs. But man, people are freaking out about this stuff like on every level imaginable, right? From smart speakers to Xbox One, which Kinect just disappeared. Well, what about the voice stuff there? And what are we doing here? And Cortana as available as an app. I don't remember the number, but Amazon. What is their whatever their app is for their digital assistant, it passed some figure on iOS that I think was like 10 million downloads or something like some big number. It's like, guys, this is what's going to happen. I mean, there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, and it's for people who are I would say a little bit older, I think, or maybe more experienced in life. They're used to a world where Microsoft had 90% market share.
Yeah.
And that's just what it was. And Microsoft is no longer that. And I honestly think this is for the better that, they're now competing probably on just about every front other than desktop OS, but that's not really a battle anymore. And so it's a good time to be a consumer.
It's not, I've always, I'm amused is the wrong word. It's interesting to me when younger people are enthusiastic about Microsoft. You knew Long Zheng, didn't you? Or did you know?
Yeah, I know Long.
Yep. Do you know Long, I guess I should say?
Yeah, actually, I met him many times.
Yeah, okay. So, when I met him years and years ago.
Long. Yes.
Oh, look at that. So, when I met him many years ago, probably at like a WinHack or something, I mean, he looked like a 5-year-old kid. And I was like, dude, I got to ask you, I said, what made you come to this world? Like, it seems like someone of your generation or of your age or whatever would be more inclined to follow Apple or something, I don't even remember what he told me, although I will tell you right now he's a much bigger fan of Apple than he is of Microsoft. So I guess he got there eventually. But yeah, I think this ties into a very broad issue that we see with any enthusiast community, which is just that we have a big part of our ego kind of tied up in the company, in this case maybe Microsoft, or the product, maybe Windows or whatever. And it's weird how you can feel a personal impact when something that doesn't technically matter, frankly, fails, or is not doing as well. Someone very recently, I think in our forums, had put up something about like what scenario do we need to get to where Apple fails? And it's like, why why? Like, what does that matter? I mean, the market is big enough for multiple players and so forth, and different types of solutions. And if you're not a fan of Android, you have iOS. If you're not a fan of iOS, et cetera, et cetera. But Yeah, the world has changed. Sorry. I mean, it's just not, it's not the way it was. That's for sure.
And not that you asked this question to me, but I'm going to answer it anyways. And so
Mhm.
you said to Long, like, what made you
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah,
fall
yeah,
in
yeah.
love, or why Microsoft? My specific answer for that, and I know very clearly because it broke my heart, which Microsoft tends to do, was Media Center. I built a very nice rig for Media Center, which then branched out from Media Center to Windows Home Server because I needed proper
Yep.
backup and storage for long term. And as you now know, both of those products are dead, and that's just the way it works.
Yeah, and the lingering after effects of that stuff almost never go away.
Right.
There's still people who claim that Media Center was the greatest thing Microsoft ever did, or Zune, or whatever the thing was at the time. I just heard from a reader who was said something like, "I have kind of a successor of Windows Home Server, which was Windows Server Essentials or whatever version. It no longer, this older version is not updated, and I don't even know if Essentials exists anymore, to be honest. But now they don't support like Windows 10 or whatever, or some new version of Windows 10, and it's like, you're you're kind of using something that's is old now. I mean, I'm sorry, but yeah, I just, for whatever it's worth, I mean, I came up in a different era, and I was not a fan of Microsoft. I was more of an Amiga Commodore guy in the early 90s, for sure.
Explains so much.
Disrespect. Well, by the way, Brian Bagnall has written the definitive history of the Amiga, which I'm reading right now. He just came out with it, and I'm reminded of some of the stuff that was really special about that computer, including the fact that a computer released in 1985 had multi-processing and multitasking off of floppies. This is stuff the Windows world didn't have for 20 years, 15 years after that. But anyway, I hated Microsoft. And in the mid-90s, I got my first wind that I might be doing some good work. And the first one was Word 6.0, which was impressive. I mean, to a degree that it just made the word processors that I had on the Amiga look ludicrous by comparison. Windows 95, which was the first version of Windows that I thought didn't suck. I mean, it was, viable. And then also, I got to give credit to id Software because, and this goes back even further, to be honest, starting with Castle Wolfenstein 3D, but then Doom, of course. Those guys were able to wrench so much performance out of the lowly PC and do things that were impossible on the Amiga. And the Amiga was configured as an arcade game machine from the 80s, which meant that it did like sideways scrolling and parallax, scrolling and all that kind of stuff. It was great. But this kind of first-person thing, they eventually figured it out, but it was too late by that point. It was something you could not do on the Amiga. And to see a really pathetic computer just like scroll really fast through a game, that was, maybe the beginning of my transition to this world. And now I'm stuck in this hole with the rest of you. No, it's just, but Microsoft was computing, and I really resented them until probably the mid to late 90s when I finally felt like they were finally starting to do some really good work.
Well, the good news is if you keep digging in that hole, you'll eventually get out. You'll end up in China, but you'll be out.
You'll have in China, yeah. That I can use Baidu and whatever their version of Linux is.
You'd have, Alibaba as well instead of Amazon. So you got all sorts of good options on that side of the world.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Good stuff. All good stuff. Speaking of all good stuff, folks, we on Friday like to take a look back at the comments here, and a nice little tongue-in-cheek comment from, his name is Jeffrey. I need to read these names. Camaroto. This is on the Windows 10S turning into Pro. He says, the most likely explanation for this is that Windows 10S became self-aware, realized what it was, embraced self-loathing, and then directed its users to something better.
Jeez. Wow, I didn't see that one, but yeah.
Yeah, this is a good little comment. So this actually is another kind of interesting comment here, and I think it kind of goes back to a lot of failed Microsoft products. So this was in the post about the Cortana glass thermostat from Johnson Controls. A user was asking if they should wait for this one or grab a Nest. And Ghostwriter writes, he says, stick with a Nest A far more sensible choice, Microsoft or Johnson Controls, will pull the rug out from under this within 6 months due to poor sales. I'm almost certain that Microsoft threw money at them to produce something. Otherwise, they would have taken the risk themselves.
Well, okay, but let me just offer up an alternative fact. Actually, it's not an alternative fact, an alternative possibility, because it's really just a theory. And because I just covered this today in Ask Paul. Again, this ties back to what we were just talking about. People are really concerned that Microsoft is not going to have this position in the consumer market, right? When they drop services and so forth. I really feel strongly that the future of Microsoft is in the cloud and in back-end services, right? And that, Chris Capicella was on Windows Weekly in December, and he was talking about how the consumer market was really important to Microsoft. They were never going to leave it, and that these things played together side by side, businesses and consumers. And I get that, but I believe him, but I think it's a little different than most people envision. And what I mean by that is that you're not going to be driving in a car of the future with a Microsoft logo on the dashboard. You're not going to be using a mobile device with a Microsoft logo on it. You're not going to be, Microsoft may not be the front-facing part of it, but I think Microsoft's future is on the back end of those things. It's the smart services that serve those things. The future of gaming, for example, is very interesting because it's going to be streaming, it's going to be hardware agnostic, and it's going to be a world without consoles. Well, it's kind of interesting. Microsoft has lost all three of the previous generations and current generations of video game consoles, but it is the only company of the top three, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, that is uniquely situated for that future. They're the only one that can do it. In fact, you could almost picture a scenario where Sony had to go to Microsoft or a major Microsoft competitor like Amazon to support its own ambitions in video games in the future, because it just doesn't have this capacity. So I would just say, a smart thermometer, I keep calling it a smart thermostat is not it's just a thing on the wall. It running Google Assistant, or it running the Amazon thing, or it running Microsoft Cortana, or whatever, in some ways doesn't matter, as long as it does all it needs to do. So, to date, like I've talked about the stupid thermostats we have in my house, or you have Nest devices, or you have whatever, your microwave, your oven. We've never really worried about what was running in those things, and we start to worry about it a little bit when they become interconnected. But the truth is, it just has to support the basics. So what are we talking about? This is a $300 and something device. It's not like a life investment. You're not marrying someone. It's not, you're not buying a car or a house. It's just, if it doesn't work out, you can get a Nest down the line. The reason you buy this device is because it is smart to some degree, and it does have whatever interoperability it has, and because it's really nice looking, right? I mean, I think when people go into a high-end home furnishing store or a Lowe's or whatever it is, they're like, well, is it Google Home compatible? I think people look at it like, look at that thing. That's awesome. Let's get that, I think it's a great looking device. And I think it's kind of a weird thing to say because it's more money, but in some ways it's a little bit less of a risk than an Invoke speaker, because when you buy an Invoke or any one of those speakers, you're kind of using that as the center of your digital home. But when you buy a smart thermostat, it's just a thing on the wall. It's one of the data points. It does one thing. We've had programmable thermostats for 20 or 30 years. They work fine. The UIs might not be as pretty, but I think this thing is fine. This is not something I would get worried about.
And one of the things that, because I know this comparison is going to come up, people are going to say, well, Paul, Microsoft's just going to turn into IBM. Well, the big difference here I totally understand the comparison where people make that, because IBM is basically a big data company at this point. But the difference is that Microsoft is prepared for cloud computing. They have a massive infrastructure of Azure, and that is not going away anytime soon. And IBM, despite all their marketing, what they try to pitch to me every single week, it seems like their cloud is absolutely minuscule, and not that many people are using it in the same way that they're using AWS and Azure. And so it's not Microsoft is going to just evaporate.
Let's look at it from a different perspective. Microsoft is going to become the next IBM. Discuss, is that good or bad? I mean, if you say that's bad, what's your perspective on that exactly? Is it bad for you as a technology enthusiast? Because now they won't be doing the kind of end user stuff that you like. If that's the case, then this conversation is kind of pointless because Microsoft needs to do the right thing for shareholders, right? And being the next IBM is not a bad position to be in financially. I mean, Microsoft's doing great, and I think their future is very viable. I've said this many times. Like I don't care about it personally. I'm not going to be around if all there is to write about is Microsoft Azure and that kind of stuff. Like I just don't care about it. I'm sorry,
you're missing out.
It's not my thing. Yeah, well, I'm okay with that. But as far as like the notion that Microsoft becoming the next IBM is a negative thing is a rather selfish standpoint. I mean, yeah, great. I mean, so you mean this company that was great in the 60s, great in the 70s, great in the 80s, great in the 90s, great today, they're going to be like that? Yeah, okay, good. It was a very different company, maybe at different times. There's nothing wrong with that. That's great. I don't know if you saw the chart I put up that I forwarded from like Bloomberg or something. It was the top 10 or 15 companies in the world in 1967, 97 and 2017, whatever the time frames were. And it was really, it was even further back than that. 100 years ago, one of the top 5 companies in the world was Bethlehem Steelworks. It's right up the street from where I live. It is a like a rotting hulk of nothingness. There's no steel business in Pennsylvania. It's gone. Yeah. There's a casino there. That's what's there. It's very unusual to find a company that can exist for 100 years or more. If there is one, if you can find one, I can assure you they're not doing the same thing they did on day one for the most part, right? I mean, Nintendo started off as a company that sold little wooden dowel toys and things like that. I mean, there's all these different examples of companies, but companies need to evolve, they need to change, and they need to adapt to the times. And I think, honestly, Microsoft, whether they succeed or fail, we'll see. But this is a company that it would have been very easy to get stagnant and not change because they were very successful at what they were doing. And they are changing, and they're positioning themselves for this future. So, yeah, it's going to leave out guys like me and probably a lot of people who listen to this because we care about the consumer stuff. We care about end user stuff. We care about devices and, software and stuff like that. And maybe that's not where they're going. But, I mean, to complain that they're going to turn into the next IBM is kind of sour grapes. I mean, we should all be that successful, that far into life or whatever. I mean, that's great.
Yeah. One thing I do want to point out before we wrap it up here, David Thunderbird points out, he says the Amiga computers, Paul, they were not prone to meltdown.
That's true. Yeah, secure. Because they ran on Motorola 68K, whatever processors. Yep. Yeah. I miss them.
You got
world could have
anything else?
Been a different place. Could have been a different place.
You got anything else today, Paul, before we sign off and then fly to Vegas?
Can't see this, but sitting about 4 or 5 feet in front of me is a box. That is the box for your computer. It spent literally all day yesterday, like literally all day. I went to bed. It wasn't done yet. In fact, it sat on 10% for so long I was worried about it. But anyway, it reset. And I don't know why it took so long, but I actually brought it up and went through the setup, and I just threw in like a Brad offline user because I just wanted to see if it was okay, and yeah, it's fine. So I'm gonna try to get out today. If I don't, I'll do it tomorrow. But I will ship this before I go.
I fully expect this thing to show up with Windows XP on it.
No. I was actually a little. Well, I did the PC reset, the Microsoft thing. So after it launched, and then after it got stuck at 10%, I thought to myself, HP clearly has their own restoration tool in there somewhere that I didn't even look at, and maybe I should have left that on, because you want the stuff they give you some interesting stuff. There's like an Omen command center and whatever, and I was like, I hope I didn't screw this up. So when it came up, I just wanted to get into it and look at it, and it was perfect. It came right up. So yeah, I think you'll be happy with that.
Well, I just hope that it runs warm, and then I'm going to put it actually under this desk to keep my feet and toesies a little warm.
Honestly, you're not going to notice it. It's quiet.
Is it that quiet?
And yeah, it's crazy quiet. It's so nice.
Well, I am looking forward to that, unlike seeing you in this.
Yep. Sorry.
We really do hate on this conference, and people are probably thinking that, just rolling their eyes. But trust me, it's the best way to describe what CES feels like. Imagine a tech conference inside of an airport. That's
and now you have to also imagine that airport goes in every direction to the horizon line, as far as you can see. It actually extends past the curve of the Earth. That's how big it is, and it's full of, what is it, 100 and something thousand people?
Yeah,
whatever the size is now. It's terrible.
120,000 of your closest friends who are all just healthy as a horse, which I'm probably bringing diseases to Las Vegas, so it's all my fault.
Oh, I'm planning on it.
Just going to ignore that. But today's show, folks, is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab, providers of cloud-based backup, file, and management services. Go check them out at cloudberrylab.com, and we'll catch you right back here. We'll be in Vegas, so things will be slightly different next week. So kind of give us a little bit of lenience on when things get posted. But we'll have a couple shows from the show floor and around the city. And if nothing else, have yourselves a wonderful weekend.
By the way, did you see Mary Jo wrote a story about Microsoft has canceled Cortana integration with Dynamics CRM?
No.
Right. Now, on the surface, that doesn't seem like an interesting story, but what? I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think the bigger question is, but why? What's the...
Yeah, like if we, if Microsoft drops Groove and pushes people towards Spotify, could Microsoft drop Cortana as a front end and push people toward Alexa, and then provide the back end services that would connect that stuff to the enterprise?
That just seems really risky, because obviously Alexa, stop.
I know. Sorry.
Runs on AWS and was just shut off my entire office.
Just saying. Kind of makes you wonder.
Interesting.